They're recording now.
All right, peace everyone, welcome. Thank you for bearing with us with these tech issues. It's been a long morning. My name is Kanav Kathuria. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the founder of the Maryland Food and Prison Abolition Project. I think if we could just go around, Antoine, Mr. Williams, Mr. Turner Bay, if you want to just introduce yourselves, and then we can kind of jump right in and I'll do a little overview of what we're talking about before we get started. Antoine, if you want to kick it off.
Good morning, I'm Antoine Quarles, founder of Hope Baltimore, helping oppressed people excel. Formerly impacted, been home over 8 years. Basically started this in the process to be a support and stability of a voice of resources for the formerly impacted community, which stabilized a gap filling model to resources in Baltimore that basically shows the oppression and the stigma barriers against ex-offenders once they are released, trying to find a measure to move forward.
Give thanks, man. Mr. Turner Bay, you want to introduce yourself?
My name is Alonzo Turner Bay. I went to prison in April of 1989. I was sentenced to life plus 5 years as a juvenile. I served 31 years, 6 months, 15 days, and 5 hours in prison for a crime that I committed or happened, or offense that happened when I was a juvenile offender. I've been home approximately 1 year. It's a struggle trying to make the transition, learn how to be a man on the outside. So I work with an organization by the name of FRESH, which stands for Fully Restoring Every Son's Hope, nonprofit that works with those who are coming out of prison, men and women, help them reacclimate themselves in the community, help them get jobs, take their driver's tests and all those things. We donate food to the homeless, clothes. I've been an activist. I am the author of the Juvenile Restoration Act bill, which passed with the assistance of Jazz Lewis and Delegate Irk Burns, who is now the U.S. Attorney General for the state of Maryland. So I'm just here.
Yeah, thank you for being here, man. We also have one more person, Mr. Williams, who's on the phone. Mr. Williams, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. My name is Dennis Williams, and I am currently at Somerset County Detention Center, which is on the Eastern Shore, right next door to ECI, the 420, the minimum security. I can look out my window and actually see the annex, as they call it. I have spent approximately 26 years in the prison system, day for day, and I believe, Mr. Turner Bay, your name sounds very familiar. I probably ran across you in the system. You say you spent 31 years in there, and I've got 26 years in, and your name does sound familiar. Even your voice sounds familiar. And I basically the organizations that you guys are involved with, the homelessness and helping ex-offenders and people who get out of prison. I have just recently been through all of that. And to top that off, I am handicapped. I need double hip replacement. I am in a roller walker as we speak, and I have fell through loophole after loophole after crack after crack. I literally got released August the 6th, and I was homeless up until a couple weeks ago when I got rearrested on a violation, and I have been through everything from homelessness to hunger to even Mr. Kanav. He's been with me. He knows what I've been through. I've been trying to get this surgery. I can't get the surgery because I'm homeless, and I've been trying to get substance abuse treatment. Can't get substance abuse treatment because most of them aren't handicap accessible. So it's like I'm falling into catch-22. And I have just recently left Baltimore. I was with helping up the homeless on, I think it's Fall Way in Hillen. And they couldn't even really help me. So that's basically it, to keep it short.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for being here, Mr. Williams, and thank you to everyone. Can y'all hear him okay? Just like a little thumbs up if you can. Okay, cool. Yeah. So Mr. Williams has, the way the phone call system works, around every 15, 20 minutes, he'll have to call back in. So if we have to just take a second there, just giving you all a heads up. But I think, a quick framing of the session, a lot of times when we talk about prison food and food systems, or sorry, a lot of times when we talk about food systems in general and food sovereignty, what's missing from the conversation is prison food and the prison food system itself. Nationally, there's about 2.3 million folks behind bars. So the state serves, hundreds of millions of meals to incarcerated folks every year. And in Maryland, where we're based and where we work, the average length of confinement is about 7 years, right? So the state serves 7,500 meals to a person over the length of their incarceration on average. And I think what we really try to center is that instead of serving as a form of nourishment, food in prison is really a form of violence, a form of control, a form of dehumanization, a site of exploitation. And as we'll get into today, a form of premature death due to just the drastic consequences it has on people's mental and physical health. I think given all that, right, this is, things were so terrible before COVID. And then when COVID hit, as we'll talk about today too, prison food just got even worse, right? I know Mr. Turner Bay, we talked about this when we spoke too, just the ways in which prisons are treating folks with COVID in the first place is unimaginable. And then on top of that, food is exacerbating just the harm that's happening on the inside, right? So I think today, what we're really trying to do is just uncover what the prison eating experience is like, especially during COVID, and make connections between the prison food system and our food systems on the outside. So, huge thanks to folks for being here. Of course, to Mr. Turner Bay, to Antoine, to Mr. Williams for sharing your stories, your time, and your space, and your energy. I think before we get started on the actual prison food meal, a lot of times, we tend not to center the whole person when we talk about incarceration. So before we even get into that, I think just a kickoff icebreaker question for folks would be, if you could just share a favorite meal or a meal you enjoy, or like to cook or like to eat, or any, just to start things off. Antoine, if you want to start and then just popcorn it to someone else.
I mean, what do you mean, home?
Yeah, at home.
I mean, it's a variety of things now, but like Turner Bay say, for years of the conditions of the environment that I grew up in, I was back and forth in and out of juvenile institutions, and straight transferred, waved on to adult incarcerations, and then for 2 stints of like 10 years and then another 10 years, like prison understanding of food, like, was the meals that was there for me, but like now I love eating like ribs. When I'm in the house, I love, on Sundays, like I'm able to cook myself baked salmon or lemon pepper salmon, like I had really come accustomed to like eat sushi, for like just little quick grab goals, cheeseburger. It's just like a different variety of things now. I have been coming into fried mushrooms, fried broccoli, things of that nature, where in prison, like when I came home, I knew none of that stuff had even existed.
Yeah, give thanks, man. Mr. Turner Bay, you want to share just a favorite meal you enjoy on the outside?
I don't have no favorite meal. Every meal a favorite meal because I'm able to cook, what I want. I'm able to go in the refrigerator when I want. I can go to the grocery store, get what I want. So, I look at it like this. So I'm thankful, I'm blessed. I thank God that I'm here, and I don't take it for granted because I know what's happening behind that fence with them brothers and sisters on that other side. So it's not really been no favorite meal. I don't eat no pork, I don't eat no red meat, and I don't eat no chicken. So I eat turkey, fish, seafood, and it's man, I just try to enjoy the food that I get. And I one thing I do when I go out restaurants, I eat everything on my plate because I hear a lot of people saying it's not polite to eat all the food. They say you got to leave something on the plate. It's not polite. I don't know where they get that from, but if I pay for the meal, I'm consuming the whole meal. And not just that, I think about the brothers on the inside. You know, me leaving something on the plate is not proper.
Mm-hmm.
So ain't no favorite meal. I just enjoy eating what I can, when I can, or when I want. And you know, and I just try to take advantage of that because I can remember times I couldn't.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Mr. Williams, would you want to share?
Yeah. Well, when it comes to my favorite meal, it's probably just basic. Ever since I was a kid, I always had a craving for my grandma's chicken and dumplings.
Hmm.
She made them big fluffy yellow dumplings, and the chicken would fall off the bone, and that was always the meal that I looked forward to. And right today, that's one of my favorite meals. That's probably the one that I can think of the most. Like one of the guys here at the detention center that I'm with now, he says he's a meat and potatoes kind of guy, and I'm pretty much the same way. I love all meat, steak, ribs, pork. I eat it all. But when it comes to my favorite, I would have to say chicken and dumplings.
Yeah.
But as Mr. Turner Bay, I believe it was, said that about eating your everything on your plate. I was raised that way because of the fact of hunger in the world. There are people out here starving. And for me to leave something and not, even Mr. Turner Bay, Mr. Antoine, I don't know if any of y'all have been up Hagerstown, but Hagerstown has a reputation of feeding you. As they say, them hillbillies up there, they will feed you. But one thing about it is, when I was up there in '96, I did about 5 years up there. When you hold your tray up there and they put it on there, them officers will let you know. Don't get all that food on there and don't eat it. If you're going to get it on there, they ain't got no problem with piling your tray up. But they're going to make sure that you eat it. And there ain't no waste of nothing. So, in respect to that, yeah. I was taught at a very young age that there's people out here hungry. So, if you're going to get it on your plate, make sure you're able to eat it. Because there are people out here that want it and need it.
Yeah.
So waste is nothing that, that I am inclined to be doing.
Yeah.
And
Thank you.
Same thing here right now in the detention center. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Williams. So I guess just, diving right in then, for folks who are not as familiar, right? For folks in the audience, what's a typical meal on the inside? What's on a tray? How does the food taste? And, whoever wants to jump in, feel free to take that one.
Let me say this. I heard Dennis Williams talk about Hagerstown. Well, they don't feed like that up there no more. One thing I want everybody to notice, that the number of individuals coming up with diabetes and high blood pressure in the system has, I'm saying, went up like 10-fold, 100-fold since I've been incarcerated. Now, any prison you go in, they'll do a diabetic call around about between 3 and 4 o'clock. In every prison, you're gonna have every bit of about 100 to 200 people going up there for insulin or get a finger stick. You might have more. And the reason that is because of the food. They feed you so much starch and so much salt on the inside that it's pathetic. You know what I'm saying? You get bread, you get 4 slices of bread with all your meals. You get potatoes, you might get rice. You're gonna get 2 starches at lunch and at dinner. And you're gonna get, if say they got beef stew, they're gonna give you a whole bunch of 1 minute left. They give you a whole bunch of gravy and a little bit of vegetables and probably 2 or 3 pieces of meat. So, and then the meat choice is very poor. So a lot of the diet is a diet that's in all reality bad. It's causing us a lot of problems. You got a lot of guys that got, like I say, diabetes, high blood pressure, they're starting to get a lot of heart failure, congestive heart failure in the system. And these are guys who may have came to prison at very young ages. And so in turn, the diet is causing guys' health to be put in jeopardy. You know what I'm saying? I'm seeing guys going dialysis at young ages for guys who I wouldn't have thought. But when you look at all about it, it's the diet from on the inside. They're giving us a whole bunch of starch, a whole bunch of white starchy foods, and they expect you to be healthy. They give you the food that make you sick, and they deny you the medical treatment that can make you better.
Antoine, you want to jump in?
Yeah, like John Ray said, like the process of a lot of people that you look around that like serve incarceration sentence that have been released back to the community, that are a lot disabled and like have all these ailments of like high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, things of these starches is like what created this. And basically, like, as he said, like 2 meals a day, you're gonna get heavy starches, you know, and then everything in commissary is a base process of starches. So, you know, people like making pieces out of bread. So that's creating more starches than putting sugar to make things sweet or honey, you know. So it's just like a lot of ailments. And like you said, like a lot of us went to prison as minor in mentality. So like we only survived and learned how to eat out of a microwave the best way we could. And then like over the years of like really getting into this, you know, learning that the cheap modality, like, or what the cost of one meal costs per individual, you know. So like, no wonder like so many people like have to go 3 times a day to get these medications, but then it's a majority, like it's at a concert of people waiting to get medication, and then the nurses and things don't want to serve because like people going through pain, they frustrated, they depressed, and then they got high sugar rates, you know, from walking, dehydrated. So it's like the distance like plays a part of the wear and tear on the body with the food is not nutritious. So the body is like feeding off itself and breaking down, and then using all the like processes that it need to help itself, it's straining itself to survive.
Yeah, good. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Mr. Williams, same question. I know you had to hop off, but I think you're good now.
I want to expound on 2 sides of this. Like I said, I'm right now. I'm currently experiencing the food. I'm here at the Somerset County Detention Center, and all our food comes from ECI Annex. I used to be at the Annex and work at Central Kitchen, where we made the trades for this detention center that I am. So, and I'm quite sure Mr. Turner Bay and Mr. I can't think of the other guy's name, but you probably heard that ECI has about the best food in the entire prison system, which is mostly true. But as far as the health-wise, they're still following the same program and diagram that the other prisons are following. You're going to get your pasta, your sodium, your rice, your potatoes, starch, which, you know, is not good, a whole lot of starch. You know, they give you more starch than anything because it's a cheap, I believe, and I'm no expert, but I believe because it's a cheap meal and it's a filling meal. Like y'all said, you know, all your meals, you're going to get some type of starch, you know, including the bread. And I'm excluding the bread. I'm not talking about the bread. I'm talking about you're going to get some type of rice. Like this morning, we had cold cereal, we had eggs, we had bread, we had boiled eggs, cold cereal, and some type of pastry. But other than that, lunch, we haven't had lunch yet. That comes at 12 o'clock. I know there's going to be some type of rice, pasta, potatoes, something to some type of starch. Now, ECI doesn't season their food like they used to. At least as far as what I'm getting now, we don't even get salt and pepper packs with our food. There's no seasoning on it at all. I believe ECI is maybe has been trying to lead the way in having better prison food. I don't know if that's by design or because of where we're located here on the Eastern Shore. We have access to local fresh fruits and produce. They have a contract with local produce and things, they have their own central kitchen. But what I want to say on this is, and y'all might correct me if I'm wrong, this is just my opinion. Mr. Turner Bay, you said you have done 30 some odd years in prison. And I want to ask you a question because I find this very disturbing. Like I said, I've got about 26 years in day for day in the prison system, and I'm only 52, so most of my adult life I've been in prison. I have never seen somebody over the age of 85 live in prison. And maybe you have, Mr. Turner Bay, but I haven't. Throughout my entire prison system, I was in JCI. I was in there with a lot of people, and I remember the Cut Hospital. Dude was in there in very sickly and very disturbing situations because bodies were just deteriorating. And a lot of these guys have been locked up, as you were, Mr. Turner Bay, for 25, 30, 40, 50 years. And you have to look at the environment that you're in. You're in prison. You're not getting the wear and tear that people are getting on the outside. You're not doing a whole lot of physical labor. So you're not putting a lot of wear and tear on your body. So why aren't you living longer than the actual person that is actually on the street going through the wear and tear of everyday life? So I have to chalk it up to, as y'all said, the sodium, the starch, and the food that they're giving you. Your diet has got to have some type of contribution to why people aren't living longer behind bars. I haven't seen nobody 85, not many. I haven't seen nobody, but I'm quite sure there may be one or two, but not as much as I would think of people who have. There's a lot of people in prison that's doing life, that's been down 25, 30, or 40 years. Why aren't these people living past the age of 90? You're not getting the wear and tear, and you should be getting nutritious food, but you're not. So it's got to be something with the diet, in my opinion. I'm no expert, but that's the only thing I can chalk it up to, the diet. And I believe it's by design. I don't think the actual prison system wants you to live a long life in prison because of the cost and everything. If you got people in prison living to be 110, 115 years old, just think about the bed space that it would clog up with all these lifers living that type of lengthy life. And the average person, I believe, would probably make it to 79 or 80 in prison if they've been locked up 35 or 40 years. Does this make any sense to anybody, or am I off my rocker?
No, you ain't off your rock. I know a few guys that's in their 80s, but I worked in a hospital in the Maryland House of Correction in the Cut. I worked in there for a nice length of time. My job technically was sanitation, but because of the convict in me, the man in me, I end up becoming an orderly. I end up changing guys' diapers, putting them in the bed, cleaning their sheets, changing their diapers. I began to do all these things.
That's in the Cut Hospital, right?
Yeah, I worked in the Cut Hospital all the way up to 2006 when
Yeah.
an officer was killed. So
Right.
even guys in the hospital, for example, if you're on dialysis, you're supposed to get a renal diet. Like I said, I've been locked up 31 years, 6 months. I have never seen a renal diet anywhere in Maryland prison system. Why is it if a person on dialysis, they are eating the things, they are being forced to eat things that medically they are not supposed to, because they decrease their value of life and enhance their chance of death? No prison in Maryland has ever given out a renal diet. They tell you they do, but if you go down the renal diet list, they don't get it. They don't give out diabetic diets. They don't give out low sodium diets. All of they got what they call a medical diet, but if you look on a medical diet, they give you what they call buttered noodles. They take noodles and put them in the butter, different types of noodles, put butter in them.
Right. Right.
Instant potatoes or baked potato. They give you all the things, and they give you 4 slices of bread. Lunch, all 3 meals, you get 4 slices of bread. But if you're a diabetic, if you're on a renal diet, all these things can hurt you. All these things can kill you. And so it has to be contributed to the diet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think kind of building off that, right? How did things change during COVID? And I think just starting off there, I know Mr. Turner-Bay, you and I have talked about this too. First of all, how did prisons treat people who developed COVID? I know we had talked about, the tents, if you want to expound on that. And from there, we can kind of get into changes in the food too.
I was there when COVID broke out, and even talking about it hurts, because when COVID broke out, even right now, they got us locked down. And I always say us because I don't never separate myself from the men and women on the inside. As they still struggle today, I still struggle. They locked us down 23 hours a day. They would bring around your food for lunchtime. It would get there around about 10 o'clock, maybe 9:30. They wouldn't give it to you until around about 1 o'clock. So it's sitting there, it's ice cold, grease clogged up on it. There's no way for you to heat it up. And that's what you are forced to eat. And a little bit after COVID start, they got nurses that work in the prison, but they will also work at hospitals. So a nurse that worked at a hospital on the outside, she brought COVID in the prison. And she gave it to a few guys that was diabetic. And we know what happened after that. Some of them died. And it hurts me because I can remember one of my friends, he was sick. And he asked me to push him to the hospital. His name was Charles Wright. I pushed him to the hospital, man, and he died in less than 30 days. He caught COVID up there in the hospital. He had COPD. The COVID had hit him so bad that he was coughing up blood. And he died. So, the staff don't take COVID seriously, because while I was on the inside, they would do cell searches. Now here it is, we supposed to be isolated, kept in our cells so we won't catch it. But the officers would come in and do cell searches and they wouldn't wear no masks. So now they come in there with no masks on. They're telling us to strip. We stripping, giving them our clothes. They are handling our clothes, and they're in our living space. A cell is only 6 by 10, so ain't no social distancing. And man, it began to spread rapidly because they didn't take it serious. And a lot of good men and a lot of good women lost their life, because even now DOC, they take this pandemic Laxical Daisy. Like right now, they got a thing going around. Now they want to try to pay guys to take the vaccine. We give you $25 worth of comments, so you take the vaccine, or we give you this, you take the vaccine. And in all reality, man, DOC don't give a damn about them men and women behind that door. All they concerned about is how much overtime they can work.
It's all about money. Bottom line.
Oof. Yeah, thank you for sharing, Mr. Turner. I know that even recalling these memories as you're saying is tough. So, sorry, Antoine, it's you.
You know, like Johnny Bay say, like, we can't even get a number or the actual number of people who are affected with COVID that's in the inside. You know, we can't even get a number of the actual people who got released, that got tested, that had symptoms or like processes of being around it, that's coming back to families and households. It's coming back to like stores and things of that nature. And like, we keep saying to them, like, so many numbers have been like adjusted to make things look good, to get money, and using it as like a tool to get COVID relief funds, but not doing anything in the process that they said they're supposed to do with the COVID relief funds to help people, community, or anything, right? And then the strain that like the adjustment has placed on, it just made like the number of people who are actually passing in prison from this, they not even going to release it because they don't want like investigations to actually know that they are held fault because they're not doing the probable thing to like make this thing safe and content for individuals, because we all know that like individuals in prison is real estate, they property, you know what I'm saying? So long as I can find a measure the way they keep it held in my base of being a welfare for me or a system of income for me, then, you know, like it's so many things that like talking with people, family members, that they're going through this, their son, their child, their daughter, their grandson, you know, and then the stress overwhelming is affecting on both levels, you know. Like you said, like you got so many people work other jobs and then work in corrections, but then we don't even really know who they are because they not even exposing themselves, and they can be right around us, and they are affecting both sides of these communities. They are the carriers that's transporting it to destroy everybody. You know, it's like, it's a heavy piece. It really is. And then we have to like figure out, because I know like the wear and tear on a lot of people just listen to all the stories that we tell them, and like really they absolutely right, because we don't hear these things, we don't talk about them, we don't do this. But in the wear and tear, reaching out to the family, this is why so much havoc goes on behind the wall, because people only trying to survive in a measure where they don't have no control over, but yet trying to do the best they can in the moment, you know, to stay healthy.
Let me say this. I'm gonna tell you something about COVID on the inside that a lot of people didn't pay attention to, and they still don't pay attention to. If you go to the hospital complaining about symptoms of coronavirus, do you know you're punished?
Oh yeah.
You're placed in isolation, you're placed in segregation, and you stuck there for 30 days. Everybody say a 7-day quarantine. Nah, I'm talking about, I got sick right before Ramadan 2020. I stayed sick for 23 days. Man, I thought I was gonna die. I know I had COVID, but I didn't tell nobody. My cell buddy knew I was sick. 3 other guys on the team knew I was sick. Man, I did everything I could to fight, man, and I thank Allah that I made it. You know, I got headaches. I had sneezed one time. I got a headache so bad, and I suffer from chronic migraine. I got a headache so bad it hurt my body that I was crying. You know, but they was taking guys out of population and just putting them in a butt-naked cell. And it's leaving them there for 30 days. When I was supposed to have been released,
You have 1 minute left.
they came to me, they took me up to the hospital, and they gave me these papers. I started reading them. And I told the people, y'all ain't give me no COVID test. Cause I put the press on the warden to get one. Man, we ain't giving you no COVID test before we release you. Going home. If you don't go, we keep you. They made me sign a piece of paper saying they gave me a COVID test. They said, if you don't sign this piece of paper, we keep you. You don't get released. I've been gone 31 years. So they force you to sign a piece of paper that's saying that they gave you a COVID test. But in all reality, they're not giving COVID tests like this. Governor Hogan said you're supposed to give a person a COVID test before they release. You cannot release a person unless they have a negative COVID test. Look on his executive order. I'm willing to bet $1 million to a dime. They ain't never gave a person a COVID test before they release. Why? And I'm saying that's what's happening. They are releasing people from outside of here into another community who may have COVID, but they don't want this health department and society to know that this person caught COVID while inside, and now he's potentially going to be exposing other people in the community. It's about numbers and about money. As long as I keep my numbers down, I can get more money.
An incarcerated individual at
Mr.
Somerset
Williams is
County
just calling
Detention
back. I know he
Center.
had a few things to say
This
about
call
that
is
too.
subject to recording and
1
monitoring.
second.
To accept charges, press 1. To refuse, thank you for using Securus. You may start the conversation now.
Hey, Mr. Williams.
Yeah.
Yeah, welcome back. Did you want to add anything around COVID on the inside?
Yeah, most definitely. I got caught my new charge February 4th, 2020. At that time, COVID wasn't really a factor. And what had happened was I got my retake warrant, violation of parole came into effect. And March of 2020, I ended up being in Patuxent. And I remember the exact day that they shut the courts down. I was supposed to go to court March the 20th. They shut courts down March the 16th because of COVID. That's when everything really became serious. They started to shut the courts down. And I was in Patuxent. I was down in the dorms. And as Mr. Turner Bay and y'all said that it was a 23-1, but at Patuxent, it was really 23 and a half. Guys were only allowed to get 15-minute showers and 15-minute phone calls, and they were back in the cells. I was just fortunate enough to be down in the dorms because of my age, and that's where they was holding a lot of the parole violators. And but I remember the attitude and how it was exactly when COVID first started shutting everything down. Nobody knew a whole lot about COVID when it first broke out. Nobody. Everybody had their speculations. Donald Trump was making a big thing about maybe bleach would kill it. You know, nobody knew. So everybody was didn't know what to do. They started. I remember they was worried about masks. They said they ran out of masks and didn't have enough masks. And then they started saying, well, you can put a scarf around your head and just protect yourself from other people's breathing, and that's how it was spread. Then next thing I know, Patuxent started passing out these masks, and I remember who they were made by. They were actually made by MCE, Maryland Correctional Enterprise. But it wasn't even 2 or 3 weeks before that, I think Governor Hogan and Donald Trump got a pat on the back for sending billions of dollars over to China so they could get these PPEs and these masks when they could have easily got the prison system, Maryland Correctional Enterprises, to make the mask, and they could have saved that money and put the money back into the economy. But anyway, I remember when they shut the prisons down, and in Patuxent, all of us prisoners, especially down in the dorms, we was in the dorms, we was open, and we told the captains and everybody, the majors, and even the Assistant Ward came through and asked us to listen, y'all got the social distance, we don't know enough about this disease, and it's killing people and this and that. So we told them, we said, listen, the only way that us prisoners can get this disease is if you officers and staff bring it in here to us. That's the only way. There's no other way that we can get it. So we asked them, if y'all go like Mr. Turner said, they in other prisons they were doing cell checks and all that stuff. Well, Patuxent, we forced them. We told them, if any way that y'all can take our lives in consideration and as less as possible, you officers have any type of interaction with us inmates. We understand you got a job to do for security reasons. But Patuxent, I have to give them credit when credit is due, at least down in the dorm and throughout the whole prison. They took it serious. They made sure that their officers stayed in the bubble, at least down in the dorm. Them officers did not come in that wing and that dorm and bother us one iota of a second. Them captains and majors, assistant wardens said, listen, you officers, stay away from them prisoners because it makes sense. The only way that they can get it is if we bring it in there to them. And it ended up still getting in. They had checkpoints at the entrance. All the officers had to do temperature checks and all that type of stuff, but they didn't know enough about this disease at the time. And as far as back to the food, we were on lockdown status, and it was bag lunches at first, strictly bag lunches. But it was one hot meal, and then it was bag lunches. Then it would be one hot meal. They would switch it up. Breakfast time, you might get a hot meal, and then lunch and dinner, you would get a bag lunch. And y'all know how them bag lunches is. For the record, I would say it on the record, that mainly a bag lunch consists of what we call sweaty meat, some type of ham, bologna, cheese, or peanut butter and jelly. Basically, that's it. Or you're going to get boiled eggs, and basically that's a bag lunch. And that's what it was the whole entire time that this COVID was in existence. You would get one hot meal, and then you would get bag lunches. And then they started getting to the point where they would make adjustments, and they would give us trays, and they would give us hot meals for the most part. And so that's how COVID affected, at least when I was in Patuxent, that's how COVID affected the dietary and the food. It became bag lunches, and then, as time went on, they tried to make it better for us, at least Patuxent did, and they started giving us trays and started giving us as many as hot meals as they could, get, once they started getting a grasp on it. But, the COVID really had an effect on the prison system. And I remember, you guys, I guess, are from Baltimore. I'm from the Eastern Shore, but as I said, I was in Patuxent at the time, and I remember Marilyn Mosby. I don't know her, only the fact that she was elected to, I guess, the state's attorney, prosecutor or whatever, Marilyn Mosby. I remember when she got on the news at the beginning when COVID first hit, she actually literally put her career on the line and got on the news and demanded that Governor Hogan start letting prisoners go. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I remember specifically because I remember we was all sitting in Patuxent watching the news, and Marilyn Mosley got on there and said, listen, prison is a place that they cannot social distance. So the governor needs to come up with some type of way to start letting these nonviolent offenders and start easing up the prison population so there can be some type of social distance. And she got criticized for it. But you know what? And the governor turned around and said, well, those guys are more safer in prison than they are on the outside right now, which I thought was a bunch of crap. myself. But Marilyn Mosley got criticized for it. I don't know how that affected her career or whatnot, but I amended her. I commended her for that because she jumped out there and said, you need to start letting these guys go because this prison is a an environment where COVID will thrive because of the fact that prison is overcrowded. You can't social distance. And
my bad.
Well, anyway, what I want to say on that is that, next thing I know, as I said, this is a parole violator institution. Next thing I know, the commissioners, the parole commissioners, I don't know who made that decision. Next thing I know, guys just started getting called up front automatically. And they would come back with a bag and say, man, they just cut me loose. I got 3 or 4 more months to do on my parole, but they just said they cut me loose. And next thing you know, that dorm became half empty within weeks. It was all types of empty bunks everywhere. And like I said, Mr. Turner Bay and the other guy, you guys know for a fact, whenever a prison bed comes empty, it ain't but a couple seconds before it's full again. You know what I mean? So when I started looking around and I'm seeing all these empty bunks, and I've got 26 years in day for day in the prison system, this is the first time I ever seen this many empty bunks at one time. I knew that this was a serious case. I knew that this COVID thing was serious and that they was taking it serious. The commissioner just started letting people go. And right today, I got to go right back now as we speak, next week. The assistant warden come to me yesterday and said, Mr. Williams, because of your medical condition, you got a parole retake. We're going to get you over to ECI as soon as possible so you can deal with this parole or whatever. So I got to go back into the system and deal with parole or parole retake. I got a retake as we speak. I don't know what to expect, but the assistant warden told me, point blank, they don't want to lock people up with nonviolent crimes in my situation no more. He said there's possible chance that I might get medically paroled or just get kicked right back out on the street because COVID is still a factor in the prison system, and maybe you guys can help me with this. I don't know. Is that true? Are they taking nonviolent offenders and sending them back out and trying to keep social distance in the prison population at a minimum, or is that just a bunch of crap?
Yeah, I think it's probably a question for Antoine right there. Also, just I want to also we have about 15 minutes left before Q&A. Just also want to get back into the food, just concentrating on food a little bit too. But yeah, Antoine, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, first of all, DOC and the court system run a 2 different level about what's nonviolent offenders and what's violent offenders. So they may not keep you in a prison setting, but they're still going to keep you on a conviction income labor relation where money will be made off you as long as you're on parole, probation before judgment, time served, things like that, and right now we fighting a process that's trying to relieve a legislation that goes around all the barriers instead of keep right to vote, ban the box, expungements, what area living. We need to form a legislation across the board that goes to the White House that says from federal and state local jurisdiction, high-risk community cities that are all affected by oppressed situations that deals with barriers that increase people from the stability of living equally with whether it be wage-paying jobs, low income, transitional housing, providing the needed services, even for you with a medical condition. The reason they kick people out is because medically you cost 2 times what the normal inmate costs. The normal inmate costs $39,000 a year. An individual who needs medical clearance costs $64,000 a year. So it's more to release you and let you go, whereas though the income may not be there and not to be able to take care of yourself, where processly you'll wind up doing something again and wind up right back in prison. So, you know, you just gotta be careful of the process of what's being played on the board and how you're being set up to fall into the trap again.
On me is more likely, and I gotta have surgery. The doctors, I got what they call osteoarthritis. I need double hip replacement. The orthopedics, I got 2 orthopedics that already said that the only thing that can relieve my pain, because this is a very painful condition, is surgery. No medication will relieve my pain. So I have to have surgery. So what you're telling me, what I'm getting from you, is that I'm going to call, if they keep me and decide to try to do this surgery at ECI or wherever they do, or put me in bond secure or wherever, I'm going to cost them more than it would cost them for them to just continue me back on the street or medically parole me so I can get this surgery. Is that about pretty much what you're saying?
Like, unless the surgery is being notified while you in their care that they might do it, because that surgery gonna cost close to like $100,000. You know what I'm saying?
I think we lost him. Yeah, he'll call back. I think I think we have until like 11:20, 11:30 or so. I was thinking we could do a little Q&A, you know, maybe in like starting in 10 minutes or so. If folks have questions, please toss them in. I think something I wanted to get to, Antoine, you and I have talked a lot about kind of the similarities or just the relationship between prison food and communities under food apartheid in Baltimore. If either of you kind of want to speak to the relationship of prison food, both inside and outside the wall. Yeah.
You know, like, there's you know, like, me and Turner have been around in this process since the early 1990s. We was young, you know what I'm saying? And there's a lot of things that we see meals now that's being sold on the streets that actually came out of prison. You know, certain wraps, certain burritos, you know, those were things like, they're culture things from Latinos and things of that nature. But in urban communities, you know, those wraps and all that stuff, there's a guy called Nacho Bangers where he got like noodles, cheeseburger, and something else, and some $5 with a bag of chips. And that's a hookup commissary wrap meal. You know, you have certain industries selling like hot chicken, rice, onions, green peppers, where in the inside we will cook noodles and rice and put like canned salmon or kipper snappers over top of with some hot sauce and green peppers and onions with some cheese, throw it back in the microwave and call it a rice bowl. You know, there's certain things that liberated into our community as hustles, but it's also playing effect to carry on diabetes right at the corners where fast foods are. Predominantly, like, all markets been moved out of like base community areas in Baltimore and been made like like 1 hour drive distance from east to west, you know. So like, it's been a strain on people who don't have like cars to get to where they need to get, or like they had to have financial means to take Ubers, and all this just creates another strain with the apartheid, because like during the pandemic, we had to actually adopt the area, because where they was giving food out, people that were struggling in a oppressed community wasn't even getting food. So me and a couple of organizations that's in our network, Hope Baltimore, Out for Justice, Citizen Policing Project, we like set up Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays to give out information about masks, about COVID, making sure people had masks, making sure people had carrying bags to carry food that they can like storm somewhere so they can just have something throughout that pandemic to keep them safe and keep something on their stomach.
What was your question again?
Yeah, the relationship between food kind of inside and outside the wall.
I just, you know, I'm gonna say this, and some people might not like it when I say it. Racism play a lot into it, and economical racism play a lot into it. I'm born and raised in Washington, D.C., Carceral, Baltimore City. Right now, D.C. is going through a gentrification process unlike anything I've ever seen in my 50 years on Earth. Baltimore City is going through a gentrification process. So what easier way to gentrify the cities and to get it back and to take over the city and get what you want than to make the people of that area unhealthy? If I make you unhealthy, you can't fight. If I have you unhealthy or I have you in a situation where you're concerned about putting food on the table for your children, you're putting a roof over your head because I've price gouged you or I've outpriced you out the market, worried about me gentrifying the city or gentrifying your neighborhood or moving everybody out your neighborhood, it's not your priority, it's not your main concern. So we got to look at the whole picture and the whole ramifications about this. I'm feeding you things that's high in starch, give you diabetes. I'm feeding you food that's high in salt and sugar, giving you high blood pressure. You know, you're getting kidney failures and you're going blind. Some of your limbs getting cut off. So, and then your rent goes up. You know, I know a young lady who here in DC, she paying over $2,000 what they call a studio. Ain't nothing but an efficiency. Ain't nothing but a living in the living room with a bathroom in it. And I'm like, so when I start putting them two elements together, the food and the rent, and then that's not including the violence and the drugs that we have in certain neighborhoods. So your main concern is merely trying to survive, and you're surviving with food that's actually killing you. Some people don't realize, man, I read this book one time and it says never eat while you're angry or you're upset, because the food can be turned into poison, it become poison. You know, your body don't digest it properly. If you're not in a peaceful state of mind when you eat, if you're not relaxed, your body become poison. Your body can turn the food into poison, meaning the food can begin to affect your body in a negative manner. And if you look in all these destitute communities, who are at peace? Who are in a peaceful state of mind when they eat? They either angry about something, they rent, where they go get their next meal, their children, their income, their job. So their food is killing them on top of killing them. So, you know, we got to look at this whole thing as it's set out instead of just one thing. It's a multi-pieces to this puzzle. And if we look at the puzzle, man, economical racism and physical racism plays a big part in it. You know what I'm saying? Some people are just all about the dollar and they don't care about how many lives they have to take to get it.
I want to, you know, keep this, like Mr. Kanal said, on, and we all know, you know, as we've been conversating, that the high starch, the high sodium, and everything else that the prison foods as of now are serving to make our health not as healthy as we should be. Well, I want to talk about the solution. That's what my conversation right now I want to be about. What can we do? What ideas can we come up with to make not only prison food more healthy, but food all the way around the board? Like you were just talking about, sir, about people out there that's trying to feed their families and everything. And I have talked with who I call Mr. K for short. I have told him about one of my ideas that God has put on my heart, and I'm not going to go into it in detail because it's still just an ideal form, and I want to keep it to myself. I swore Mr. K, Mr. Kanav, I swore him in secrecy about it, but he thinks it's a brilliant idea. but I plan on coming up. I have a way to where I believe that I can pretty much solve one of the problems of healthy and affordable. That is one of the keys. Not only healthy, but affordable foods for not only prison populations, but all the way around the world. And that's my goal. Once I get this surgery and get out of here, that is my goal. That is my business that I plan on starting, is to come up with a not only healthier food, and what I mean by healthy food, I'm talking about fruits and vegetables. More fruits and vegetables and more organic, as they call it. I don't understand why organic food, as in my understanding of organic, is just natural. You know, no growth hormones or anything like that.
Williams?
Can I ask one question? Because I'm ready. I might have to go. Do anybody have a question for me? Anybody have a question for me in particular? Because I'm gonna have to make it back down the highway because my job over for the rest of the day.
Yeah. I don't know what happened. I think we lost Mr. Williams. Okay. I think if you can hear me, please call back. There was one question in the chat. And I think Antoine, you had something to say as well. So I think I'll read out this question, then we can go back to what you were saying. I think this is Nicole. If you want to read it out, go ahead, or I can read it out for you. What do you prefer?
It doesn't matter to me.
Go ahead. So I guess I can just read it out. Cole says, I have a question. It's about the tension relationship between prison abolition and prison reforms, like getting better food for people who are incarcerated. Obviously, incarcerated people deserve much better food. And I personally believe that no one should be imprisoned at all. It is inhumane, as we've heard today, and doesn't actually work. How do we advocate for reforms that improve people's quality of life without reinforcing the legitimacy of a system that is ultimately rotten? So Mr. Turner Bay, if you want to take that, I, of course, have some thoughts too, as I'm sure.
I'm friends with a person by the name, she's a professor at Georgetown named Allegra McLeod. She's an abolitionist. She wrote a book on abolitions, and I wrote some papers to go with it. In all reality, it sounds great, but in order to get to there is a process. And I've noticed some abolitionists don't believe in taking a process. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying we need to sit down and talk about the process. First, let's reform the criminal justice system in such a way where we can decarcerate, we can lessen the numbers. And as you lessen the numbers, you began to abolish some of the facilities. You began to tear down some of the prisons, and you begin to change laws where they don't affect as many people. So the abolitionists, they got a good idea, but it's a process you got to go about it. So like the Juvenile Restoration Act, I think getting involved with the Juvenile Restoration Act and helping more of our juvenile offenders get out of prison. Then we look at our elderly, our seniors that are in prison, people who've been locked up 30, 40, 50, 60 years. We start tackling them. We tackle our nonviolent offenders. We tackle our drug addicted offenders. Once you begin to tackle these different groups of individuals who are in prison, like when Schaefer went in office, he commuted the sentence about 50 women who was locked up for domestic violence, who either hurt, injured, or murdered their abuser. When we take on issues like that one at a time, we began to abolish the system. Right now, this country is not for complete abolishment all the time. So you got to strategically abolish certain issues, certain groups. So when you start seeing more people decarcerate because you are tackling issues, decarceration is actually abolishment, but it's said in a different manner. So when you look at it like that, we're going to look at all these juveniles who've been locked up 20, 25, 30 years. We're gonna look at these people who 65, 70, 80 years old, who've been locked up a long time. We're gonna look at these women who are battered. You know, let's look at issues like that. When we began to remove these issues and move these groups of people out of the system, we began to decarcerate. And when you decarcerate and you got empty prisons, what do? You destroy them. You tear the prison down so they can never fill them back up.
Yep.
So as we do that, that's abolishing the prison system. But you got to be willing to work with reforming the system instead of just tearing the system down. You got to rebuild it in another fashion where it's not so quick to incarcerate people of color or poor people. I'm not sure if I answered your question the way you wanted me to, but that's how I see it.
Yeah, I totally agree with Turner. Decarceration, reform, and restoration, like, it's a process. And a lot of people jump in and they just say they want to abolition, we want to end. And I always say this, like, if this comes to an end today and someone attack somebody's grandmother and like mutilate somebody, who will be held responsible for these things? So there are certain processes, but in nonviolent measures, like certain instances, we know at mental health cases, we know that like traumatic like communities have been systematically formed and empowered. So like once we start educating people on what reforms need to be in place, we can start allowing certain resources and help in places where people can start building communities that start reforming citizenship. One of the things, like, we run so often and get denationalized and desensitized from citizenship that it mentally affects us as a culture. And we really don't understand what the problem is, who's creating the problem, and systemically why the problem continues to grow. But now we got so many people coming around and saying, like, this shouldn't have happened. They shouldn't have been beating on these people. Why is drug dealing in that neighborhood so much, but it's not in my neighborhood so much? This is something that has been a learned behavior to people survive in a certain measure. So now Maryland got over 19 prisons in one state, but you got the one state that has the greatest amount of millionaires in it. So like financially, we can start getting behind things and legislations and moving things out to become relief barriers to decarcerate, but like the original players in the game, they playing on both sides of the fields though. So we gotta like figure out who's the ally and who's actually the adversary that's playing the part as an ally. And I think like dealing with, like, one of the things that I've been doing is getting a lot of delegates and city councilmen, like, if these are your areas, you need to participate in them. So when we having back to school events in those areas, we gradually want them to come and see and talk with the community, because if you representing the community, you need to understand the issues of what's going on in the community, because sometimes the news and media project certain things that truly ain't really the community. It's just somebody in an active moment that was traumatized, that was scared, that reacted out of fear, and it was in burst right then and there because they was in that community. So like a lot of times we have to look at the way we have been brought up to stay accustomed to a thing, that how do we break the custom, get formally back in traditional principles and start raising our children. So like they used to say, it takes a village to build a community. It takes mothers and fathers and families and households to raise children. But yet we have been torn down, and we're in a situation where communities have homelessness and boarded up houses, and the kids have no one to look up to gradually say, that I can be him or be that firefighter or be that educator or be that liberator or be that abolitionist. All they had really to look at is people falling out, overdosing, killing each other, getting arrested. So these are things that the children survive to try to go after.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Antoine. I think I would add just two things. One, we recently put out this report around the Maryland prison food system that, Antoine, we were obviously hugely influential in creating that report. But part 6 of that report kind of speaks to this tension between reform and abolition. And, we kind of lay out two, sets of recommendations for how we can mitigate the dehumanizing experience of eating on the inside while working towards, the abolition of the system itself, right? So reforms or non-reformist reforms that don't strengthen the carceral state, but, as Mr. Turner Bay was saying, Antoine, as you're saying, how we can really rethink resources, right? Like, we know that BPD, Baltimore Police Department, spends $550 million plus per year of the city's budget, right? We know that Maryland spends $1 billion on its carceral system, right? So what does it look like to build up food systems controlled by the people? We've talked about the relationship between food apartheid and food in prisons too. So for folks who are trying to learn more, I dropped the link in the chat. Yeah, and I think we got Mr. Williams back on too. Mr. Williams, I don't know if you wanted to jump in for this question. We only have a few more minutes, just as a heads up.
I'm gonna try to make this brief and quick. Let's back to the food. I strongly believe that healthy food brings about healthy mind and healthy way of thinking. I don't think there's any question about that. And if you got healthy food in the community, you can, raise your kids up on healthy food. That is a start with a healthy community. And I also want to say that I also think that Maryland needs to get away from that warehousing of prisoners. It needs to be more directed towards, as Mr. Turner Bay and the other gentleman said, reform. Prisons have become warehouses. As you know, Mr. Turner Bay and the other gentleman, when you're in prison, how hard it is to get into a shop to learn a trade. The list is long. A lot of dudes don't even make it. There are more maximum and medium security prisons than there are pre-releases and minimums for nonviolent offenders. And a lot of the prison system is made up of nonviolent offenders. Drug dealers make up a lot of the prison system. And I got friends right now sitting in ECI. I've been helping them with the cases, trying to get a case back. You give a guy 75, 80, 90, 100 years for selling drugs. That's, to me, that's not right. When a guy who commits a murder, second-degree murder, the average time he gets is 30 years. You took a life and you get 30 years, but you're selling drugs and you get 75, 80, 100. And then, like you said, we all know prisons are overcrowded. They don't have enough shops and educational system. It needs to be reversed. For the nonviolent offenders, they need to be let go and maybe extended parole and put in other types of programs. There need to be more programs directed toward reform instead of incarceration. Now, for the violent offenders, people who like to say go out and kill grandma just so they can get a hit of crack. Those type of people need mental help. I really believe they need some type of mental help, and so that would be where an actual prison behind a razor wire and the fences, that's where they would be put until they could be reformed. But the nonviolent offenders, those the drug dealers that make up most of the population, there needs to be an alternative. There needs to be some type of reform other than just incarceration and warehouse. And like I said, a lot of these dudes don't have education. They don't have job training. They don't have job skills, so they don't know nothing else but to sell drugs. So there needs to be other type of avenues that they can go to say, listen, I don't want to sell drugs no more. I want to be able to work to make money. But the jobs aren't out there. The training's not out there. So we need to invest more in that type of situation, I believe. And as I said before, back to the food, I really strongly believe that healthy food will help build a more healthy thinking and wiser community. It's a start.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you, Mr.
you know
Williams.
what I mean?
We're coming up on time. I hate to cut you off. We just have a few minutes left. I just wanted to say, if folks have any, just last minute comments, Antoine or Mr. Williams, before we hop off, and then I can just do a quick closeout if there's any like last, quick thing you want to say.
As far as me, Mr. Williams, no, I think about said enough and took up enough of you guys' time. I appreciate this opportunity, and I ask you guys to, however you do it, just pray for me that I can get this surgery, however it is, if it's done in ECI or wherever it's done in prison or wherever, so I can get on with my life. And I am trying to figure out, Mr. Kanab knows, we've talked about it in the past. I am working on a solution as far as trying to build healthier and raise healthier food.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams, for joining us, from the inside too. Yeah, really, really grateful to have you here. Antoine, if you have any final comments, man.
Yeah, like I say, it's a slow process, and it's a working process, and there are footprints that are being laid that show that the work is happening. There are legislation changes that are happening. Like there's like food policy venues just working together, organizing around it to educate people, empower people, and collectively come together to like continue discussions like this, so more and more people can be involved, and more people that's connected to other organizers in other cities and other barriers, and recognize all the relation. That like the only way to get this done is that we got to formalize together with, like I say, community is a group of people that has a common unity. We see a common understanding about a commonality, why we have to come together to do this. We left it in others' hands, and some of the decisions have been made, but they were their choices. The choices that they made affected millions and millions and generations of cultures of lives. So now it's time to figure out a way, how do we start healing for the next 4 generations to be around, that they don't have to go through these things.
Oof. Well, y'all, thank you so much. I feel like we need another hour at least to unpack, everything that goes on inside and on the outside around food. But yeah, Antoine, Mr. Williams, thank you both so much for joining us. Thank you everyone too. I dropped my email in the chat if folks want to talk more. Antoine, I think you put your email too in your website. So, please reach out. Yeah, really appreciate y'all for being here. And I think, when we talk about food sovereignty, we have to talk about the prison food system and what it means to decarcerate and, again, tear this down. So again, thank you all so much. Appreciate you.
I'll just say something. I hope that when I do finally get out of here, that I get to meet you gentlemen. So I will be staying in touch. Me and Mr. Kanab already promised we're going to stay in touch. So I will reach out to you guys through Mr. Kanab. And hopefully I get to meet all y'all one day face to face, and we can have a deeper discussion and really present our ideas and what we really want to accomplish to the
Definitely.
right people in the legislation and make some type of change.
Definitely. All right.
Okay?
Well, thank you all. Hope you have a great rest of the day.
Yep.
We'll talk. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.